Good afternoon. This is my favorite part of the entire conference. I hope you guys are excited. All right. So everything we do and everything you've heard all week long is to support folks like these running around in the field to defend our country. Yeah? Or the boat or whatever. So these gentlemen, we have all gentlemen this year, these gentlemen have come in to spend some energy and some time sharing with you their thoughts and perspective about what it's like out there in the suck and what they think about the experimental events that they have attended. This afternoon there is a power hour that's talking about the experimental events that JSTO puts on to get warfighter input into our technologies early and often. I won't go into detail on that, but every one of these people sitting on the table has been to one of our events, and so they're graduates of one event or another. And so they have a unique perspective, both on modernization of the force and on what experimentation means to them. And so we're going to go down and introduce each of them, and then we're going to start receiving questions from the audience, and they will answer it. As we've been introduced, this panel is speaking from their own perspective. This is not the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines' position on anything. They're speaking from what they understand, what they know, and their own experience. So I would like to ask you to remember that as they go through. That's our caveat of, this is my voice, not anyone else's. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the phenomenal folks next to me. First, we have Senior Airman Charles Brousseau. Charles Brousseau is from Arlington Heights, Illinois. He is an Air Force Emergency Management Specialist. He's spent 7 years in the Air Force and has been stationed in places like Germany and Qatar, and he is currently stationed at Seymour Air Force Base in North Carolina. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, ma'am. Looking forward to answering everyone's questions.
Wonderful. Next in line, we have Staff Sergeant Larry Dobbs. Staff Sergeant Dobbs was born in Noonan, Georgia. He has had 15 years in service. And he is currently stationed at He's in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And he is, I'm sorry, my mistake. He's served in Fort Knox, Kentucky, but he's been currently serving I'm just messing this up. Where are you serving?
Fort Liberty, North Carolina.
Fort Liberty, North Carolina. I keep wanting to call it Fort Bragg, and I keep stumbling over changing it. He is a public health officer, or public health NCO. So CBRN crosses the border between medical and, as we've learned all week, medical and CBRN itself. And so he is here to give us that perspective. Is there anything you'd like to add from your background?
No, I was just glad that there's events like this that exist that I wasn't aware of until I got the experience.
Awesome. Next in line is Staff Sergeant Joseph Everett. He is from Rome, Georgia, 6 years in service, currently serving at MacDill Air Force Base. And he's been in places like Davis-Monthan, and in his relatively short career, he's done quite a few wonderful things. I'm going to let him tell you about it.
Yeah, I've deployed twice out of Davis-Monthan. I'm currently at MacDill now, so right down the road. So yeah, I'm just excited to be here.
After that is Captain Juan Gonzalez. Juan Gonzalez is from the National Guard. He is a National Guard perspective. He's currently stationed at the Civil Support Team in Georgia. He is from San Juan, Puerto Rico, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But he's been in the National Guard for all 14 years of his career. But he's got a very varied background. He's not only a CBRN officer now, but he's been in the MP battalion as an HRC representative, and as an engineer, he went to Afghanistan. So anything you'd like to add?
Really just been a privilege being here, learned already a lot, and looking forward to continuing down this path.
Next in line is Master Sergeant Joshua Malkow. He is from Bay City, Michigan. Go Green.
Go Lions.
Go Lions. He's a CBRN officer from the Marine Corps. He has 19 years of experience, a varied background on where all he's served, but the one that I pulled out, that he was lucky enough to be assigned to the Marine Squadron 1 for the President's Marine 1 helicopter. I thought that was cool. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm happy to be here. Hopefully I can contribute something, and we can all learn some stuff, and happy to have the per diem.
Excellent. Next in line is First Lieutenant George Moore. He is from Birmingham, Alabama. He's been in the United States or in the Army for 3 years. He is our infantry representative. So he came to our last Saboa with his infantry platoon, and so he's got a unique perspective from our CBRN officers. He's a United States Military Academy grad, and he's currently stationed at Fort Liberty. Anything to add?
No, ma'am. Thank you, and thanks everybody for having me here.
And last in line, but not least, is Corporal Alex Plasencia Garcia. I have had trouble saying that name all day, so please forgive me. But he has been in the Marine Corps for 2 years. He is a Marine Corps specialist and currently stationed, he's from Belhaven, North Carolina, and currently stationed at, I'm missing it. Where are you stationed at, sir?
Camp Lejeune.
Camp Lejeune. Got it. Anything you'd like to add?
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Hurrah.
Hurrah.
We have asked all of our panel representatives to be candid, to relax, to tell some jokes. So we'd like to make sure that we keep that going throughout. Guys, no holds barred. We want to hear it straight. I've already forgotten the joke, so I'm going to let you tell it. Lieutenant Moore wants to share a joke.
Yeah. So Mr. Brooks was talking about yesterday how, we're looking, or it might have been the other panel speaker, we're looking for who's going to star in the next CBRN movie. Really just looking for who's going to make the Captain America juice. Like, I'm really looking for that stuff. So I'm pretty tall right now. This is great. I know what it's going to look like when I finally hit that growth spurts everybody's been talking about. But, yeah, that was that's my piece for that. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you. All right, now that we've lightened the mood, we'd like to start answering some questions. We've got a couple that we presented to the panel members before they got here, so we're going to start with those. And the first question is, when focusing forward, what is the biggest chem-bio gap you see? What keeps you up at night? And how can experimentation help close that gap? Master Malco, would you start with us?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. So what keeps me up at night? Like to quote a hero of mine, I keep other people up at night. That's General Mattis. No, but for me, I think probably emerging biological threats because of the advanced technology that we have right now and the ability to modify or create viruses or other biological weapons. I think that's going to progress at a tremendously fast pace. And then we also don't have any real early warning detection systems to find those things far enough in advance. We're kind of reactive towards that. So that's kind of the biggest concern that I would have if I had to choose one.
Awesome. Staff Sergeant Everett, would you like to add anything?
I would agree with that completely. I think the fentanyls that we know of, we don't have the capabilities to really measure that right now or deter it enough. I think weeks like this are essential for us, the innovation moving forward and getting it down to a tactical level, because this stuff doesn't progress in a vacuum. So we have to keep talking, keep implementing this stuff in the field in order for it to progress, in order for it to close that gap.
Lieutenant Moore?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so I think I'd echo both of them, but for me, at the platoon level and the squad level, stuff that keeps me up at night is like the training. So lack of training on advanced CBRN techniques. Every soldier that goes in the Army, learns how to put on the suit, how to wear the mask. But when you actually get to the force, it's difficult to actually find the time to use even the minimal sensing capabilities we have, as well as just input that into the larger scale exercises that we do. So I would say the training, and then again, the unknown. Like, I don't know. This is not my world, so I'm really grateful that all of you are here and can handle that side, but I just don't know what else is out there, and I've learned a lot this week, so that's stuff that keeps me up at night, ma'am.
Dubs?
On the chem-bio side, kind of caveating what everybody else said, is just the equipment that people at the front line would have for bio purposes. I can't really imagine anything that's at the front lines, and the closest thing to anything bio-related would be the lab techs at a Roll 2, but Roll 2s only have maybe 1 or 2 lab techs, if that, And if you look at the Army framework, they're going to be like thousands of meters away from the front line. So by the time they even get to that portion, there's probably nothing they can do at that point.
Brusso?
For me, protective gear is a big one. There's pretty big gap right now, largely because we're still using a lot of stuff that we're using like World War I, World War II era. We currently are using suits that may or may not be able to deal with some of the ongoing and coming threats that are coming out. So for me, at least, I get a little nervous when I realize that there's stuff that can bypass a lot of the equipment we have, especially when we don't have enough equipment to detect it early on to avoid it. So to me, the protective gear is a big one.
Corporal Garcia?
For me personally, whenever I think about the gaps, I think about the rise in production of fentanyl and the fact that our near-peer adversaries are producing it at a larger scale, and we don't have that much to detect it in our squads.
Captain Gonzalez?
So my perspective is going to be a little bit different, not just being National Guard, but also being in the civil support team. Thankfully, we get a chance to work very closely with a lot of the personnel in this room. And so we have equipment that really can detect a lot of this. The one shortfall that we still see consistently is on the bio side, and we need to close that gap on having some kind of equipment that's going to allow us to rapidly detect bio threats so that we can have an opportunity to catch it, treat it, and maybe get ahead of its spread. So I think bio is definitely what keeps me up the most, and just thankful that we have a lot of equipment set to handle most of the threats.
Okay, next question. What was or were your biggest takeaways from your participation in our experimentation event? What value did you get out of it? We're just going to run down the line on this one.
The back and forth, just conversations. When people would show us their equipment, I could ask about it. When they asked me what I thought of it, I could be honest with them, and they were very receptive to it. So I guess just the back and forth nature of just kind of feeling like it was working towards improving products, and those products could be used for us someday. So it was, I like that part about it. I thought that was my favorite.
Mine was the different echelons of like CBRN efforts. I didn't know about some of the CBRN capabilities that went past a brigade. So echelons above brigade, wasn't tracking some of those. It's nice to know that people are investing, and there was some promising equipment at these events. Like there was one piece of equipment that could potentially replace 20 cases that we'd have to carry, and these cases are pretty big. So once it gets approved, like more equipment like that would help with the condensing and just the travel portion of getting to the place that we have to do the testing at.
Mine was really seeing the why we're doing these things. Anyone can go out there and swing a meter, but seeing the why of what we're here for, what we're up against, that's really cool. Being the dumbest, smartest person in the room at all times, that was really cool because there's some brains here, and that's really cool to see, like, at the top level, what's really going on behind the green screen. So, yeah.
Absolutely, well said. I'm the operations officer for our unit, so the biggest takeaway for me personally was seeing the big push on the interoperability and the communication, ensuring that what the equipment that we take downrange and the devices that are employed all have sensors that are being automatically fed back. Getting that information in real time is a huge force multiplier because it allows us to not just have our personnel who are on ground watching, detecting, trying to feed back information what's happening. We see it firsthand, which allows me to have my science officer, has our analytical minds seeing at the same time as our entry personnel are getting this data, and they can help. We're there punching out data sheets and getting the information we need in order to be able to provide the best information on not only what samples to take, but how best to identify exactly what's happening there and then feed that information higher. So the interoperability, that communication gap, I'm seeing that gap dwindle very fast.
For me, so I was involved in CBO 23 and 24. Both of those events, I had kind of a limited role. I went as a platoon sergeant, senior enlisted advisor for my Marines. So I'm sure that they gathered a lot more experience out of that than me. But for me personally was the interaction with the developers and the scientists and the individuals that were creating the new tech, the emerging tech, being able to influence how they are designing that equipment. So when it reaches the hands of a service member, it actually is useful. So they're making those considerations early on. We all know that there's a disconnect between scientists and developers with the technologies that's coming out, and it's really hard to kind of envision maybe our side or our perspectives on what we're looking for and what we need a piece of equipment or a piece of technology to look like and to function. But that was probably the most valuable piece for me.
Yeah, so for me, I was at Saboa 2024. I've got three things. First was just on a personal level, and then for the platoon, like the value of getting the MOP gear and actually doing real training in it was super valuable, because everyone got to learn, like, okay, now, you know, I'm setting up my kit differently, I'm looking down my sights differently, so how does that actually work? Were we going to have to do this? And then two, the ability to interface with the enablers. So there was another lieutenant from a different Army unit who was he provided the CBRN support for my platoon for a lot of that. And so just getting to learn from him and his experience with CBRN stuff helped me go back to my company and kind of level up our CBRN thinking on some of the pieces of equipment that we wanted to order in the coming fiscal year. And then finally, the value, like everyone has said, of just getting, like, I had private first classes, specialists in front of developers and technologists, and being able to show, like, hey, your piece of equipment, it works really well, but like the way it's situated, like I'm not going to be able to put that on a vehicle. I'm not going to be able to put that in my rucksack. I'm not going to be able to jump out of an airplane with it. And so that was really cool to see that interface between those two groups of people that often don't get a chance to talk to each other and share experiences.
Right, so they kind of hit most of it, but being that service member, that Marine that was actually down there with the gear, I enjoyed being able to cross-train with the infantry at the same time, having the scientists come up to me, telling me this is what my piece of equipment is for, and this is how I envision you would use it, going out there into the field, going out there into the CBRN environment and telling them, okay, I see that you have a handle, maybe you might want to sling it, or maybe you want to have it be attached this way, and it's a great concept, and just tweaking it, making it better for us while we're downrange. It just, being able to influence that at the early stages is really important.
Okay, we're going to go the other direction this time, so you're going to start this next question. This next question is the chem-bio threat something that is generally a concern or even recognized and acknowledged at the individual warfighter level?
So the chem-bio threat, for CBRN, of course, that's our major job, but for the infantry, that's our job to go to them and tell them, yes, this is something that you need to be wary of, this is something that you have to think about, consider, because they're thinking about their major job, and maybe they're not thinking about how I can have my MOP inside my pack. Maybe they're not thinking, oh, I can have this level 1 detector and do this in case I come across that. So it's on us to be able to tell them. It's very important. I'd like to say they have somewhat of an understanding, but not to the level that it should be.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think you hit it really well. On the Army side, I would say your individual, like your lowest level, knows how to put on their mask, like I said, knows how to wear the suit. But other than that, they kind of just, we just kind of use it when we need to. And that's where I kind of see a lack of, on my end, like personally, the ability to understand the sensors and know which sensors detect which threats, and then what that means for me on a tactical level. So does that mean I'm putting on just my mask? Does that mean I'm putting on my suit? Does that mean we need to leave and move out to the Role 2 to get treated for something that we don't even know we have? So I would say it's a limited experience, limited thought at chem-bio threats, but it's definitely there, and it's growing.
Definitely at the individual level, right? The experience and the amount of care is going to vary greatly across the board when you're talking about just general forces inside the military, inside the Marine Corps specifically. But Marines are going to do what they're told to do. So they're going to train how they're told to train. Somebody's going to come up with that plan. So really the important driving factor is always going to be commanders. Do the commanders prioritize CBRN training? Do they prioritize training under CBRN conditions and making that time and effort needed to get their unit ready to operate in CBRN conditions. And that's really where the focus, my focus really is in my specific job, is trying to convince those units that it's important and they need to do it in a certain way.
Once again, being a part of the Army National Guard, I'd say the general warfighter from the National Guard, this would not be as much of a concern for them. Being the civil support team, as the smallest element of the CBRN response enterprise, or the CRE that was mentioned yesterday, this is what we do every day. It's 22 full-time, AGR personnel. Our mission is chem-bio rad, and so absolutely for us, it's what we think of when we wake up. It's what we think of throughout the day, and it's what we think of when we go home. On call 24/7, 365. So I say all that to say, there's one of us, at least one unit in every single state, and so wherever you guys are stationed at, if it's on CONUS, then seek out your CST close by, because I believe we can be a huge help in fixing and helping to train through that gap, because it's what we do every day, 365.
As a CBRN instructor in the Air Force, this is something that frustrates me the most, having to teach something where the buy-in just really isn't there. Thankfully, we haven't really had any major issues or concerns to do that buy-in. However, it's usually just a PCS requirement or a deployment requirement, checking a box. So, yeah, again, it falls back on the commanders to really get that buy-in to the warfighters and let them know that this is a major deal.
To caveat what he just said, yeah, it's to check the box with the 10-level task, like maybe doing the gas chamber, but no one goes into more depth, at least in the units I've been in, where they talk about, like, what's the tactical procedure if there is a CBRN attack, like they did one exercise where one guy knew if you honked the horn 3 times, that's a good sign, but no one in the camp knew that, so notionally they all died. So, like, it's just stuff like that. You got to put that into practice. You can't just assume people know something that you've learned years ago and just never brought up again. So, yeah.
More of the same from the last 2 comments. I'm also a CBRN instructor for the Air Force. It always depends on the class, how much buy-in I'm going to get, and also how much energy I put into it plays a role, but more often than not, I'm usually getting students that are there to meet the requirement, and then they want to go home afterwards, and that's kind of the attitude a lot of them walk in with. Overall, like, I can usually get them to understand how to wear the gear correctly, which is a win, and that's about all I can ask for. Can you wear the gear correctly? Do you know how to stay alive? As long as your gear's working correctly, too. That's kind of the big thing that I try to push into it, but in terms of everything else that gets taught during those classes, it's not what it needs to be in terms of the buy-in, at least kind of the same what they were all saying, so.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This is very similar to one we already had, but it's focused on combat operations in austere environments. So I'm going to focus those to some folks who've actually been in combat operations. So I'll ask first, Messar Malkow.
Yep. So I think probably one of the areas that's kind of most in need of improvement is probably early warning or standoff detection. And then also, I know it's already been discussed, but that simultaneous or immediate feedback from detectors through that network, that system network, to where other echelons of command can receive those readings immediately. I think both of those things would probably greatly improve, the readiness that units would have.
So my only combat operation I had was when I was in Cav Scout, but this is back in 2012. But when we went to Iraq, fought Warhorse, I don't even remember ever packing anything CBRN related, to be honest. The only thing we packed was the needle, the Apitrina. I remember packing that up, putting it in our duffel, and just leaving it there. But like anytime we went out on a mission, all we ever brought was just make sure we had our combo equipment squared away, and then a mine detector, and that was really it. So no, there wasn't really any CBRN focus around that time or era.
And for any of you, pending your answer you did on what keeps you up at night, are there any additions you'd like to make when you use it from a lens of combat or austere environment. Would you like to add anything to your previous statements?
I think the use of drones, obviously attaching a piece of equipment to that, and the robotic dogs, that's going to be huge moving forward. If we can take our warfighters out of the direct danger, then by all means, let's do that. Let's use drones, because that's going to be the way moving forward, I believe.
Do you think use of drones and the robotic dogs would allow you to expand those that are doing the reconnaissance to people who are not as big a specialists as some of you?
I do think so. I think for myself, not having a 3 Echo 9, we can be there as an advisory role more, and we can have more people in the fight if we do have the use of drones and obviously more equipment attached to those drones. It would need less 3 Echo 9s. We could serve back as a subject matter experts.
Did you have something to add to that, Travis?
Yes, ma'am. I do agree with the drone portion because I know it's been brought up by my battalion commander. He wants to try and do operations where to see what heat signatures or equipment give off. So if we're worried about, drawing attention, the drones would not only do a good portion for reconnaissance and just identifying what's in the area, whether it's biological or any other seaborne type of threat, but it would also divert their attention potentially, so that there's multiple facets with that.
Okay. Next question is, as the approach to warfare changes, what level of CB experience do you expect your tactical forward units to have? Does this change if the unit will be disconnected from comms for a substantial period? Anybody want to take that one to start?
I can take that one then.
There you
Yeah, so 2 parts to this question. I would say yes, at the squad level, platoon level, CB experience should increase, and I think I already talked about that with the training, and then the ability to use the sensors that we have available, mainly the JCAD. But that second part is kind of the biggest one, is the change that needs to occur is the ability to, if comms are lost, the ability to conduct a deliberate, or as deliberate as possible, decon. And that's a decon kit with, that you can carry on you or carry in a rucksack and be able to withstand all the stuff that you're putting it through. Because you can wear the suit, you can wear the mask for as long as possible, but at some point you do have to take it off. You've got to manage heat and you've got to manage nutrition and hydration. And so in order to do that, you have to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have to decon and do a deliberate decon. So the ability to do that forward or as far forward as possible is something that definitely, from personal experience, definitely needs to be learned and trained and gained.
Anyone else?
I'll add to that. So we've done a lot of different training events and exercises where we have different people doing different things. We've tried out having non-specialists participate in certain CBRN activities, specifically EOD, when defusing bombs and whatnot. If they have chemical agents inside of them or anything like that, they'll try to take a sample of some variety. It generally has not met the standard of how a sample needs to be taken in order for it to be qualified to go to a gold standard lab. However, when we're on scene with them or when we're nearby and able to communicate with them what they need to do, works a lot better. So having a combat or a CBRN experience and the tactical level down on the ground with them can do a lot in that situation.
You want to add? Go ahead.
Just say, so I think it's important to remember what the purpose and function is behind making sure that these units are ready. So we need to be able to have our combat units be able to project power and to continue and to complete their missions. And that's really what it boils down to. What do those Marines or sailors or soldiers need to do to be able to project power, continue their mission, and then close out and mitigate any after effects once they have done that. So really the biggest thing, obviously you want to share information as much as possible, but when you're on the ground and you're fighting in the middle of an austere environment and it's contested and you care about whether or not you're going to get shot or blown up, CBRN kind of falls to the backside a little bit. So they just need to be able to be protected so they can get out of that situation if they are in, a firefight simultaneously with contamination, which would be the worst case scenario.
It truly is, and I'll add, which is why I believe we definitely need on the home front, our training, we absolutely need to increase the training. If we give them the training, they know how to do their infantry mission, their tactical mission. If we make sure that we add the CBRN training to it at home, then that becomes a part of how they operate, which will assist them once they eliminate the two-legged threat. Then they can work towards making sure that they can at least now make it safely back home. So maybe they're safe from that two-legged threat. Now with that CBRN training, they can lean back on what they learned on the CBRN side of things so that they can properly decon themselves and make it out of that hazardous environment.
Okay. Next question. What is the longest time you've ever spent in a MOP 4 protected posture? Did you trust the PPE? And how confident were you in your unmasking procedures? I think we can probably just go down the line for this one. Go ahead.
Longest time I spent in MOP 4 was 12 hours. It was an exercise, so trusting the PPE wasn't a big concern for me at the time. Confidence in my demasking procedures, again, kind of the same thing, was an exercise, so it was low threat, so I wasn't too concerned.
I believe the longest I've ever been in it is probably an hour. I mean, obviously with the gas chamber, it works effectively with that. I just wouldn't, because I'm not a CBRN specialist, so I wouldn't know how effective it would be. Since I'm assuming biological would be smaller microns, I'm not sure how effective the filter would work with anything that was non-chemical related. Could be a biological threat.
Personally, I've been in it for 12 hours at a time. Did I trust it? Knowing what I know about permeation and volatility and persistency of some of these 5th-gen agents, I can't say that I would, but that's just knowing too much. I think everyone else would trust their PPE if they put it on correctly. As far as unmasking procedures, I had full confidence in myself in that as well.
MOP 4. In general, as a CST, we try not to get into any MOP gear. However, thanks to the normal Army training, I'd say maybe 2 hours in between the chamber and then the couple of different iterations of CBRN training we've done at Fort Leonard Wood. I trust it for certain hazards. However, thankfully, as CST, we get an opportunity to be in Level A. We're in fully enclosed, encapsulated gear that we can absolutely fully trust what most hazards that we get in. I'd say all hazards I've ever been presented with. So, thankful for that.
For me, MOP 4 specifically, probably somewhere in the realm of about 24 hours. But that's not that bad. MOP suit's not that bad. It's a snowsuit and a mask and some rubber gloves. Longest I've been in Level B, and if you're familiar, I'm hoping a lot of you are, longest I was in that was for about 4.5 hours with hot bottle swaps, and that was in the heat of the summer in Indiana. Doc Schwartz knows about that. I trust the PPE, or IPE, we should say. It just really depends on what it is, right? There's a lot of different stuff out there. General purpose JS list with the M50 for the general force, it's good. It's good for what we need it to be. It can be a lot better. And yeah, confident in unmasking procedures. That's not too hard. I've also done several iterations of live agent training in a varied level of IPE. So it works. It does.
Yeah, for me, I think the longest I spent in MOP 4 is probably about 2 hours. I'm going to be honest, it was at Saboa 2024, so that shows my very little experience level. Did I trust the PPE? Not fully, because it was the suit that we were experimenting with, so I hadn't been approved yet. But it was an exercise, so no huge risk there. And then how confident was I in unmasking? Pretty confident that the Army unit we were working with there was pretty good at the decon stuff, and then taking us through that, so no issues there.
So for myself and our mission set, I would say maybe around 7-8 hours, just as long as it takes to get into MOP, traverse the area, get to the mission, conduct the mission, deal with whatever goes wrong, because if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. the time it adds on from that, getting back, and then going through the decon line. And as for trusting it, I would also bounce to the idea that I was in the live nerve agent training, and yes, it was a very controlled environment, but it worked, so I would say it's pretty effective.
Varied experience in MOP here. Okay, wearable tech like biosensors are increasingly common and have been a common topic at this conference. What would you say are make or break factors for a wearable used in the field?
Stability, is it going to stay on me, is probably the biggest concern, just because with a lot of moving around, a lot of picking things up, running around all over the place, your biggest concern is probably, is it going to stay on me? It's at least mine.
Having to make enough for every individual, because they're probably not considering how close some people are, whether it's a company or maybe if it's like an infantry platoon, or if it's a person clearing rooms, because if that's the case, the number could like dwindle down to probably around 5 people. Instead of every single person wearing it, the person in the front would wear it. So you'd have to consider the logistics and what they're going to actually, how they're going to input it to certain units to make it to where it makes sense, to where it also saves money, and to where it can be spread across the forces, and the potential of it breaking.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is, can we decon it? If we can't decon it, it's a one and done use, then it's not going to be too great for us. I think obviously if we can decon it and use it over and over, then we're going to get more bang for our buck for that.
Absolutely. Durability and potentially connectivity, seeing that we want anything that's going downrange with us, having sensors that reach back. Durability and connectivity, and the challenges that come with that in an austere environment.
Well, I'm at the end of the line, so they took all my answers already. But I think probably another consideration is if it is like a biosensor type of piece of equipment where you're wearing it underneath the suit, you have to remember that it's underneath the suit. So if you're thinking about creating some type of watch that you have to manipulate with your hands that's reading your life functions, well, as soon as you put a suit on, you can't do that anymore. So you got to make those considerations too, like usability in the field under the conditions that you're designing this piece of tech to work under. Don't forget those things.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody said how good it looks, but that's like a big thing that I care about. Captain Gonzalez hit on it. Big thing is connectivity, and then what kind of signal is it emitting? Because if like my battalion commander is trying to track my heart rate or health metrics for whatever reason, definitely want to know how that's being transmitted and who else can see it. And then the other thing is, like, if I'm destroying it out to my platoon for an exercise or for a deployment, like I want to be able to track it. And this is really funny. I was telling people at Saboa too, but like, does it have a serial number on it? Do I know which one goes to which person? Because if not, then I'm going to lose it, and I'm going to end up having to pay for like 30 of them. So if you're making one, please put a serial number on it.
Right, so for sensors and wearables, I'd like to say, or biosensors and wearables, I'd like to say how long you can wear it without having to recharge it, put new batteries in it, because if you're in an austere environment, if you're forward deployed, you're going to want to carry less. At that point, you're not going to want to have to carry all these different battery packs. How long can you wear it before you have to switch that out? I think that's very important. You don't want to be mid-mission and have to be like, oh, my biosensor is gone. Now they don't know how I'm feeling, what my condition is, and who knows what they're thinking. Meanwhile, just the batteries ran out. So I think that's important.
While we're still on the connectivity issue, I know we had an interesting discussion at dinner the other day about how many computers you have for your platoon and what kind of connectivity you have to even do access. Can we talk about that just a little bit so we can share with these guys?
Yes, ma'am, you asking me?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so one thing to understand that I think we were talking is, like in the Army specifically, again, and I can only speak to where I'm at, but I've got like, we'll say 40 people that I'm responsible for. I've got 4 laptops for 40 people, and then like right now, 2 of them I think are just getting reimaged or repaired or whatever. So in terms of technology that gets pushed to us, if it requires laptop connectivity, it's probably not going to get implemented very quickly or very well. caveat off of that, the other thing that we do have, we have a lot of them, are the ATACs. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it, but like your Samsung phone, and really it's just a piece of software that's an app, and it's like, this is a really dangerous simile, especially for an infantry lieutenant, but it's like Apple Maps for the Army or for the military. If you use it like Apple Maps and look at it the whole time, you will get lost, but don't know from personal experience. However, that is something we do have a lot of, and so implementing the stuff I've seen success with new technology that we've gotten really over the last year is implementing anything that's a sensor or that you want imaging on, implementing it with that piece of software has been really helpful and something that we've used a lot of. We tested some of it at Ciboa 2024. It worked really well. So for people who develop the technology and are trying to implement it, that is one route, I think, into our world that's a lot easier than, hey, like, you need a laptop for this. So just want to share that.
Anybody want to add?
I think it is the app is what, Life 365 or something like that. You usually track your kids. It's the military version of it.
Yeah, that's a fair one. You can see where your friends are. You can see, yeah, it's great.
Okay. All right, next question. When doing an exercise or a mission, if there was one thing you could have, what would it be?
More food.
Let's start with Corporal Garcia. I didn't hear you. Corporal Garcia?
I think.
So I think the easy answer would be IPE. Obviously, you want to have your gear. If anything happens, you need to put it on. If it's just one thing, it would be my IPE. Something that's able to sustain me if anything happens.
Yeah, if I know I'm going to take a CBRN threat, it would just be, for us, like the basic JS list, the mask, and then I would say the one thing that we really enjoyed from Ciboa 2024 was being able to test the new suits that were coming out. And so if I could have one of those that has been like approved and checked off, I would absolutely take that today.
Yeah, same. I mean, IP protection. Yeah, I don't have anything.
We're talking chem-bio. I need one device. From what I remember I believe I'm the only person from the Tenacious Dragon crew here, so the ARCs. I don't remember all the ins and outs of that device, but that device had a huge library, and it could detect so many, and it was pretty small, so it was like replace the JCAT and like 5 other different things that even us on the CST have. So if I needed one piece of equipment that was going to give me a wide array of understanding of the hazards I'm in, currently, I would say speak to the ARCs.
Or something like them.
I would say more bodies, getting people out there to do the decon set of it or whatnot whenever we do come back or we do go downrange. That's going to be crucial. And if we can't have that, then the training beforehand, the training before the exercise or the mission that will allow us to do the necessary mission set, being the subject matter experts, more training.
When I was in Ciboa, there was this one cool piece of equipment, but keep in mind it's also pretty big and it does require power, but it was called a Chimera. Had like a large database, and it just needed a very tiny sample just to pick it up. And then there was a piece of equipment that was here on the first floor. I forgot the name of it. There's a piece of equipment that was a lot smaller downstairs that kind of did the same thing. Just minus you can't detach the air sampling piece, but just something that's direct reading and can get the answer real fast, because a lot of stuff that samples we take, we got to ship it back to CONUS, so back to the States, and that usually takes months just to get results back just for a normal deployment. So.
Probably just basic survival tools like protective gear. Fits right and is comfortable, hopefully. That's kind of it, though. If I've only got one thing, I want it to be the thing that's going to keep me alive, and hopefully that thing isn't miserable.
So since I'm the drug lady, what do you think about the prophylaxis or other items? Would you want those to be better? What would you want them to do for you as far as, you have your PPE now, you have your canas. Of course, you want those with you in case something happens, but what about preventatives? Thoughts?
So we had talked about this the first night. Prophylaxis sounds great in theory. Preventative options sound really good. Atropine is our go-to, and I'd be very surprised if someone was using that correctly for the first time amongst all the people I've taught how to use it. Someone in my career field wants to use it, I think I'd trust them, but anyone kind of outside that I just teach how to use it, I'd be surprised if they did it right. So I feel like preventative options would be really good simply because it would take a lot of the strain off needing to know what you're doing. And then on top of that, too, it would just kind of lighten the burden of all the things that are out there. Obviously, some of the concerns that come with it are what are the side effects, and long and short term that is, and then it also does it work, because realistically you're not able to test these things out on people because you can't just throw someone in the room with VX and say, all right, you got a vaccine, go for it. So
if they could come up with a good prophylaxis, that would definitely cover it would make the load lighter for the individual soldier, because you're carrying a small, probably something the size of a EpiPen versus a one-time use J-list, because once that's done, you got to get rid of it anyway. So how many J-lists can you carry compared to how many types of medications you can carry?
Yeah, I'm kind of weary myself about the base populace using the ATNA or the CANA or even PTABs correctly, because people will not take those diligently as they should. So I think just staying on your people, staying on the warfighter to take those, and obviously encourage buy-in with that is critical.
Absolutely. They've said most of it. Proper training of this prophylaxis. Yes, we absolutely want it to work consistently. We want it to do for our bodies what we need it to do, but we don't need to know how to employ it and then know the seriousness of it, because with every one that I've ever said, there's going to be some kind of side effects. So please let them know what the symptoms are to be looking for, so that you hit me with the right thing when I need it and not the wrong thing that's just going to potentially make things worse.
Yeah, I think they hit it, but I would like to add on there that I think it's good to have options. So you can never have too many options for protection or prevention, but really, is the juice worth the squeeze for every situation? Like, what are the side effects? What are the downsides of any potential new prophylactics compared to the threat level that is in the direct area that you're going to be going to? So yeah, it would be great to have more options, but maybe not have to use them all the time.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add. I would defer to the experts up here for that one.
I agree.
Okay. All right. How can medical support be better for the warfighters for CBRN and the wider biological threats, both deliberate and natural? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I'm not a medic, but I do work around medical companies, and then I've seen the Navy's they actually have like an equivalent to what like some in a preventive medicine detachment. They have something similar, except with their detachment they have like the tech and then also the scientists behind it to do both the competent plus just the technical support behind it. So like for instance, they would have a chemist with one of their techs to help with with the work. They had a lab tech with the actual microbiologist. So potentially maybe these Role 2s and Role 3s, just maybe a little more CBRN support in their companies, because right now they only get one CBRN specialist who's just a junior enlisted, just came out of AIT, and but then the Army would have to, military would have to kind of add more positions, which I'm sure that's a lot of work. Whatever the unit's MTO'd, maybe like add a CBRN officer with that company if they're really that concerned. Other than that, though, I can't really think of anything else.
Anyone else want to tackle that one?
I'll add, so we saw, as far as the new technology part of it, we saw in one of the breakouts some type of equipment that we could wear, like with a watch or whatnot, that could potentially tell us that we have encountered some kind of a hazard before we even start being symptomatic. So if there is technology that can be developed that's going to allow us to see what we have come across prior to us even starting to feel the symptoms, then I think that would be golden, because not only can we go ahead and administer the treatment to the person before they start getting too symptomatic, we can also pull that person from the fight so that they don't potentially expose the rest of the people around them before it's too late. Especially with the pandemic that we just went through, I think technology like that would be vital. On the CST end of things, we got a 22-man team. I got a 4-man medical with a PA, a Med-NCO, and a medical operations officer.
You are spoiled.
So we are extremely spoiled. But it is extremely important that we have that, because we know if we come into contact with anything, not only do we have our medical personnel right there on ground with us, but we also have personnel who can reach back to the local hospitals to advise them on what is coming their way, because most local hospitals aren't going to know how to. They get a CBRN hazard up front. They're not really going to, they may not have the right personnel in place to be able to administer the right treatment, and having those medical personnel to speak that language with them is going to help them not be scared when a patient comes in with exhibiting those kinds of symptoms, but also know how to treat them and maybe separate them from the rest of the populace.
Did you have an ad, Garcia?
Yes, so when I was thinking medical, during this week I was thinking about these questions, and something that bounced into my head was, when you get injured, you're going to treat the injury that's going to kill you the fastest. And maybe at a certain point, this might be a shot in the dark, but if you might have a bandage or something with a sort of neutralizing agent at the same time, so you can apply pressure, so you can sit there and stop that bleeding while treating the agent that could have gotten in there, that could be something to somebody, who knows. That's the only thing I'd add.
Okay. All right, the next question is, when you're given a new technology or a countermeasure and are in the circumstance where it needs to be employed for the first time in the field, how do you have confidence in the technology? Is there anything that the researchers could do to benefit you? I think so, to benefit more confidence in a new technology as it rolls out.
I think I'll take this one first. There's not going to be any new piece of equipment or technology that we're going to get unless it's like COTS, commercial off the shelf, that we're not going to train with through the acquisition process. By the time we get it, we're already going to know it's coming. We're going to get new equipment training. We're going to train extensively on it before we actually push it out the door onto an exercise or a deployment or a mission or anything like that. So this question kind of doesn't really apply.
Okay.
I've got something to add. So I can only speak for non-CBRN stuff in this instance, but I'll share like an anecdote from this year. My unit received some brand new night vision capabilities, night vision goggles, as well as thermal sights. We did know they were coming. However, not to disagree with you, but I did receive them literally the day I was supposed to jump out with them. And so got those and then kind of played around with them for that exercise. And then the stuff that I saw work the best was I guess researchers is the wrong words, but the people who were kind of responsible for this equipment and made this equipment came to the unit. I don't know what that process looked like, but they contacted the unit, came to us, and then took the squad leaders and the team leaders, so your NCO, your junior NCO population from the Army, and said, hey, we need 2 from each unit or 4 from each unit. And then they took them out to the ranges and taught them how to use all of it. And grabbing that population was the best move that they could have made, because those guys, their job is to, one, learn things very quickly and then teach them to the rest of the force very quickly. So I can speak to that from that little anecdote about the night vision capabilities, is that's where we've seen the most rapid increase, because we've gotten a good amount of new technology this year, and that's how the researchers and I guess the marketers did it, is they came to the unit and said, hey, let's go to a range, let's show you how this stuff works, and then very quickly everybody was pretty spun up. I would say it took a month for once we got them, and not many people had touched them until everybody was pretty spun up on it. So everybody now uses it. We used it in our big certifying exercise this year. It worked really well.
So perhaps the researchers could start to do the training program while they're developing the tool, instead of waiting till they're done and then trying to do a training program.
Yes, ma'am. And then reaching out to whoever your contact is through these different commands, and seeing if you can get a person as well as the product in front of the smallest unit possible. And that is the stuff, like we did it with lasers, we did it with the night vision, and that's the stuff that, one, convinces everybody, because I'm going to be honest, most people, like, they get handed the new equipment and they're like, okay, the manual's 200 pages long, it's a night vision goggle, like I kind of know how to use it, so I'll use it, but I'm using 20 or 30% of its full capability. When in reality, once those guys came through and taught us everything, then now it's very easy. Okay, I don't need to read 200 pages on the weekend. Like, I'll just listen to my squad leader tell me how to use it, and then 2 hours later I can use it to 100% of the capability.
So for the equipment, make sure it can be like calibrated and maintenance, well, at least calibrated at the user level. If it requires maintenance, maybe talk to whoever coordinates with, like, for instance, if the Army or Fort Liberty, like, for instance, Fort Liberty, if they need a maintenance, they have to either go through their own mechanics, which are 20 level, or they got to go to either the TMD office for the installation, which they ship it to approved facilities for maintenance. So it's got to be able to get maintenance by the Army or military-approved maintenance programs, because if not, then it's just going to end up sitting somewhere and never getting used and broken, and whatever depot it had to go to, it usually gets turned in. Like, for example, we have something called an ESB, Environmental Sentinel Biomonitoring, and it comes with reagents. It tests chemicals in the water, comes with reagents, very short shelf life, like 4 or 5 months. Once it's expired, you can't train with it, you can't even turn it on. It just became a paperweight. So, and then we couldn't order war reagents unless we're deploying, which we're not deploying. So we can't order reagents for training, and you can't use expired reagents to train. So if you can at least have it to where if the reagents expire and you can still at least train with it, that'd be very beneficial as well.
Anything to add?
We just got a piece of equipment at our base that was, I think, pretty new. It got dropped off, and then the tech the individual who dropped it off also trained everyone on how to use it. So we took a class for a couple of days, sat there, talked us through how to use the equipment, gave us handbooks to use it, and then gave us a card to contact them if we had any questions. And that checked all my boxes for how to use this piece of equipment, and I felt pretty good afterwards. So I didn't have anything more to add after that situation. So I guess that'd be a good model to go off of. Send someone who's qualified to teach people, and then have them leave a card behind so people can contact them if they have questions.
Okay. Historically, we tend to be reactive in adjusting TTPs. How can we be more proactive in training and development of TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures that support countering the chem-bio threats we may face in the future? Any volunteers? Go ahead.
Exercises are big for a lot of things. One of the biggest things is seeing if the TTP works in the first place. When you start reading this checklist or this TTP that you have in your handoff, and you're like, all right, do this, this, and this, and then you see what that looks like in practice, sometimes it lines up, sometimes it doesn't. So that's probably the best way you can actually improve the TTPs, is apply them to situations, create hypothetical scenarios where you're dealing with XYZ threat, and then do an exercise and see if the TTP is applicable, and if not, make adjustments as needed.
With the TTPs, just like this conference has been saying a few times, partnerships, for instance, Fort Liberty, they've had they try to do 2 large-scale combat operation exercises, and both times something pops up. Whether, like Poland, we had to go to Poland for the Ukraine mission, and then later was the Hurricane Helene. Both times interrupted the training exercise, so since I've been on Bragg for 5 years, there's not been any type of large-scale, like something that just puts different units together. I can't speak on it for any other unit, but at least for 44th Med Brigade, hasn't been a lot of joint training with that, because there's always something that pops up. So for a TTP to work, you got to coordinate with outside units. Like, for instance, for my job, we're supposed to direct with the quartermasters and then the engineers to find a water source to make sure it's good, and then provide water to the forces. But my current commander is going to try and do some kind of working group so we can do that, because ever since I've been here, I've never seen that happen, and that's a big deal. Water is something that you're going to need to sustain the forces anywhere. So just coordination.
From my personal perspective, I think a lot of times as a 3 Echo 9 in the Air Force, we get stuck in policy, we get stuck in doctrine. So thankfully we have these courses that are coming out known as VALX and SPEARS that allow us to go out there and mess up, like they let us mess up full speed. But that really is shaping our TTPs to where we really want to be as a career field moving forward.
I think everyone's pretty much said it. Constant training at all echelons, and then being able to do those validation exercises that allow you, okay, we did this training at this echelon, but now let's do a full-scale exercise to ensure that what we trained at these different echelons actually still makes sense when you mesh it all together. And then doing that with an open mind so that we're not leaning on historical TTPs and instead we're adjusting to the new equipment or the new mission set that we have.
I think fresh blood in, old blood out. TTPs need to come from the bottom up. You need to listen to the junior service members on the ideas that they have and not just shut them down immediately, because they're going to be the ones that are coming up with the great ideas. And then additionally, on top of that, you need to read. You need to read as much stuff as you can possibly read, and you need to share your lessons learned and the information that you have across the board as much as possible. Marine Corps' got the Marine Corps Center for Lessons Learned. I'm not sure what the other services do. But writing after-action reports and sharing that report is vital so somebody else can learn from your mistakes and your efforts before they even have to make those efforts by themselves.
Yeah, I'll kind of combine what's been said. So junior service members absolutely should be the ones a lot of times to drive those TTPs when we're talking about CBRN stuff. It's going to be getting the CBRN threat in front of the commanders who are designing these exercises and then putting people through them. So if you have a CBRN threat that no one's seen before, and then the commander says, all right, we're going to implement it in the exercise, and that's kind of, all of the guidance he gives, and then, the soldiers are going through the exercise, they encounter the CBRN threat, and whether they do well or they don't do well, that after-action review is the thing that's going to drive them to do the TP. So as long as someone is putting the focus on what actually, in this case, a CBRN threat, in an exercise, that's where those TTPs are going to happen, or those changes are going to happen, because we never do an exercise where we don't conduct an after-action review and then don't change our TTPs if they did not work.
So I think Master Sergeant hit it directly on the head. I think, first of all, we need more information, more knowledge. We have to go out and read more, see what's going on overseas, see what they're working on. At the same rate, I think get in those scenarios, going out there, because personally we've gone out, my team, my squad, we've gone out, had the old doctrine, seen what works and what doesn't work. At that point, you're going to sit there and switch, and you're going to make it more effective, more efficient, and you're going to relay that to anybody else who's going to sit there and listen, pretty much. So information and different scenarios, I would say.
So all of you have been to at least one of our experimentation events. I'm going to tie that TTP question in with our experimentation events. Is that a venue that you think would be appropriate to evaluate new TTPs? You can say no, it's all right.
So it would make sense, but only if you took the event to maybe to an installation, and then have people only in that installation kind of work together, because you got like different. Yes, we do need to build up to where different branches are working together, but start off with just the units on that installation to work together first, and then you can see how you can kind of have face-to-face with their commands, and maybe put some ideas through to where they actually will work together, and then they can see how it goes, like do the lessons learned, like mentioned before, and then I feel like it just puts more face to it if you do it at the installation and only use the people that are on the installation, so then they can actually work together, because before then they probably hadn't had a chance to work together like that before. But yes, it does. If you did it like that, I think that would be great to help, maybe not force new TTPs, but to help them figure out new TTPs, and then push it up the chain and see how it goes.
Anyone else?
Yes, I will definitely add to that. You bring up a great point, Dobbs, that having all the different echelons in these exercises, maybe there's a portion of that exercise where working through, even if it's just talking through what your TTPs would be, could be beneficial. But there's a little bit of a challenge, because we're also trying to get the scientists that are involved that have created these pieces of equipment, we're trying to give them as much feedback as possible. And we found it as a challenge during our Tenacious Dragon exercise. Do we focus, because my guys were really hardcore on wanting to get down to the TTPs and to make sure that we went in there in the manner that we really would operate in a real world situation as we as CSTs do it, but that's going to be very different as what a lot of the other echelons do it. And we also are there to provide that value to the scientists that have created these pieces of equipment so that they can have them work most effectively for us. So we can talk a little bit through the TTPs. However, sometimes it becomes a challenge because we may try to do too much on TTPs and then we don't get the feedback that the scientists need to continue to tweak their piece of equipment to make it better for us in the field.
Anyone else?
Are we on this question?
We haven't
down
gone to
here?
this question yet.
Oh, okay, very well. I don't have anything.
Okay, I'd say
But I'll ask you first for the next one.
the experimentation events for non-CBRN specialists absolutely beneficial for TTP development, because while we did have to, stop sometimes to implement the technology, like just the fact that you're getting us in mop suit, you're getting us in the JS list, you're getting us in the masks, like I learned so much about, I kind of already hit on it, but so much about how the equipment's going to change and how I'm going to change doing all that stuff that, yeah, my TTPs absolutely changed after going through that event.
On that note, I'd like to say, when you create TTPs, you're sitting there working with the gear you have, you're sitting there working with the ideas you already have, and when you're working in these experimentations, you have to adjust and be fluid, and at that point, your TTPs aren't necessarily going to line up, because if you're going to sit there and take a sample one way and this entire gear set is a different way, you're going to have to be fluid in that manner. And at the same rate, when you're going, you're moving, you're grooving, you might get into it, you're going to get reined back, because at the same time, you have to give the scientists that feedback, that information, show them that the way they intend the gear to be used, you have to use it that way, when in reality, you might not necessarily want to use it that way.
Thank you. Okay, what can the S&T community do to make impactful contributions to the Warfighter tech-based engagement activities? Master Arm Officer?
If you're developing a new piece of equipment, new piece of technology for use in service members' hands, you've got to get feedback from the service members, and you've got to take that feedback to heart, and you actually have to apply it to that piece of tech that you're developing. Because if you don't, they're not going to want it. It doesn't matter if you think that it is right or wrong, like if it needs to be designed in a certain way to fit in a certain size pouch or to be used in conjunction with our PPE or IPE, because we wear helmets and we wear masks and we wear gloves and we wear body armor and we've got equipment and we've got weapons and we've got all these other things that we have to carry. You've got to take all of those things into consideration, because if it doesn't work with our current equipment set, we're not going to want to use it, and it's not going to get used. We're going to leave it behind. That's pretty much it. You just take what you're getting from the service members to heart and consider the other equipment that already exists and whether or not it's going to work well in conjunction with those, or if it's going to work in opposition with that. That's all.
Any ads?
I just want to say simplify it, like really simplify it. I was in one of your guys' meetings earlier, and I used to think I was smart, and then I heard some of you guys talking, and I was like, man, I think I almost understood one word. Like, it's cool. So just get it very, very, very simple for us, because a lot of the, like, there's certain pieces of equipment I've used. One comes to mind when I was on deployment. It was a very large piece of equipment, and anytime anything on it stopped working, we just ignored it forever. We would mail the company to let them know it was broken, but we didn't touch any of it because it was just too big and too scary with too many shiny buttons, and we just didn't want to touch any of them. So very, very simple with a very baseline rudimentary troubleshoot list would be ideal for most of the equipment we use, if there's any expectation for us to maintain it, that is.
No bright colors.
Yeah.
Tactical colors, maybe? Those are good?
Mm-hmm. Yellow.
Yellow's bad.
Yeah.
Red's bad. Big flashy lights are bad. Loud noises are bad.
Too much infrared. It's not good.
Yeah, infrared that shoots up a disco
tree.
ball into the sky is bad.
Make it look really cool.
And it has to look really cool.
Yeah.
Captain America, cool. Captain America, cool.
Oh yeah, Captain America. Yeah, he looks cool.
Right. All right. What are your thoughts on the maintainability of your current CBRN systems? Let's start at the other end, Corporal Garcia.
So yes, it's very maintainable if you teach the guys properly. And at that same rate, you have to have the people who own the equipment, the people who you send it off for repairs to, they have to come in and every now and then they have to reteach, because at a certain point, you're going to have service members go in, they're going to know what to do, they're not going to pass it on, they're going to leave, and then at a certain point, people are going to be left off. So I'd say going back and refreshing would be important.
For me, again, we're pretty simple. I've just got mass and JS lists. We've got them. People, like, we've signed them out. If one gets damaged or whatever, there's systems in place to replace it. So nothing major on this question, ma'am.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, our equipment is generally maintained by civilians who are hired specifically to maintain that equipment. If we own it and have it on hand and it needs any maintenance, we just give it to somebody else. So it's pretty simple.
You got space at the Marines for me?
Yeah.
We have so much equipment, and it is extremely time intensive to try to maintain it all, especially with the operational tempo that CSTs have. So if there is a way that you can create a high level of equipment that has rudimentarily used, like functionally is simple to use and simple and cost effective to maintain, maybe asking for the perfect thing, that's what's going to be really beneficial to us.
Yeah, a lot of the equipment we use is very rugged, very military grade, which isn't always a good thing, terrifying. But I'd say a big thing is batteries. Don't create a battery that is, you can only find it at one place, where we're looking for this battery now after it died on us. Give us AA's. Give us something that can easily recharge or get us back out there, So that's my biggest thing with our equipment.
I don't have anything else to add to that.
I mean, most of it was already said. I did want to double stamp what you said about the batteries, because something happened the other day. We were doing an exercise for a hazmat response. We brought all our equipment out there with all the rechargeable batteries, but none of the rechargeable batteries had been recharged. We had spare batteries on them, but none of them fit inside the piece of equipment because it only worked with that rechargeable battery. So if you can make it somehow work with like rechargeable batteries that also takes disposable batteries, just in case something like that happens, because I mean, I don't know, it does, then that'd be great.
Okay, last question. If you could ask a scientist any question, what would it be? Anybody want to start?
What do you think about flat earthers? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Anyone? Sergeant Everett?
Yeah, what keeps you up at night? You guys asked us that, and I'm sure it's different from your perspective. So yeah, what keeps you guys up at night? Okay.
Anyone else want to tackle that one?
We have at one level the Hazmaster, where we can look up information. At another level, you have the Chem Companion, where you can input chemicals and different precursors, and it'll start to like narrow what you're looking at. Maybe is there any way you can make some sort of AR or heads-up display where if you scan the room, it'll read the precursors you have, maybe detect it, have something that connects, and thinking forward, it's going to sit there and narrow down what you're looking at. Just an idea, if that's the thing.
So far today, everything has been asking us what we can do to assist you guys. I guess I would just reverse that. What can we, as the warfighters, do to help you guys create the right piece of equipment that's going to end up benefiting us as well? That's for a lot of y'all.
Somebody in the audience want to tackle that one?
Yeah.
He said, keep coming to our experiments and keep interacting with us.
As long as we're invited.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else want to tackle this one? You got a burning science question you want to ask? Other than who's making the Captain America serum?
Yeah, that's about it.
We asked that one to start with.
How important is organic chemistry? Pretty important.
GPT. All right. I think we have closed out our panel. They have, if we didn't get to your question, we'll try and get to them, and we'll pose them to the soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines and see if they want to give them an answer. Hopefully we got to the most of them. I would like to give a big round of applause to our warfighters.